Prime Minister Liz Truss is to address the United Nations tonight, where she'll be telling the assembled world leaders that economic growth is needed to combat Russia.
This comes ahead of a meeting between the Prime Minister and the US President Joe Biden. Joining us now in the studio is GBNews political reporter Katherine Forster. So she's got that meeting with the American President later. She's also got a big speech, hasn't she, to the Assembly. What sort of things is she going to say? What's her message?
Yes, so she's got a big day. She's got various meetings, as you said. She's also meeting with Ursula von der Leyen. She's also meeting with the Israeli PM and the Turkish PM as well. Then tonight, 2 a.m. their time, 2 a.m. our time, 9 o'clock their time, she's got this speech to the General Assembly in which she will lay out what she's going to refer to along the lines of that G7 and other similar countries need to be like an economic version of NATO. We need to build up our economic strength, our economic resilience, so that actions like those taken by Russia, so that we can protect ourselves. So obviously it's not just in terms of military being able to defend ourselves, but in terms of future shocks, as we've really learnt the hard way, haven't we, with the pandemic and with the war in Russia. Globalisation for a long time, we think we can get whatever we need from whatever part of the world, whenever we want it. And as we've learnt with PPE from China when we couldn't get it, with the vaccine that we had to develop, that you can't rely on being able to buy whatever you want from wherever. And so a real change, I think, that now we're looking at more energy security, food security, and making sure that we have the strength to deal with these threats.
But we also have, of course, this pressing problem of Putin going public on the mobilisation of the reservists, indicating that he's going to try and ramp up the rhetoric. And this will be bilateral with Biden, but we saw pictures there of Macron and questions, too, about how much Germany, with Olaf Scholz, is bringing to the party. Clearly on the aspect of arms to beef up the NATO response, but also, as you were saying, you know, the finance to do things. Is there a suggestion that Truss will say to the others, you're not pulling your weight?
I'd be surprised if she would put it as bluntly as that.
Really?
But
never know. But
I mean, what the comment she made was extraordinary about Macron a few weeks ago during the leadership campaign. The jury's out if he's friend or foe. And then obviously yesterday, I think it was interesting. The smiles didn't quite reach the eyes, did they? But obviously, I think Britain has been very strong with Ukraine, and we really have been leaders in this. And she will want very much for that to continue. And obviously, there is a worry that countries may start to fracture in their support, and it's critical that the West comes together to stay united.
And Joe Biden, so she may have a frosty meeting with Macron for the reasons you just alluded to, but also the meeting with the American president may be frosty. We assume it's a coincidence because it wouldn't really be the way to do diplomacy apart from anything else. But on Twitter yesterday, Joe Biden, I think we can have a look at his tweet. He tweeted that
I'm sick and tired of trickle-down economics. It's never worked. We are building an economy from the bottom up and the middle up.
There it is.
Oh, the middle out, rather. I can't read my own shorthand.
And she has been criticised for saying, because she believes in tax cuts to grow a state, then effectively that is trickle-down economics. So they might not be chatting about how to run domestic economic policies in their respective countries.
I think you're quite right. I don't think there's going to be much agreement on the way to build a strong economy, certainly judging by that, because they said completely opposite things within a very short time of each other. But clearly they want to... You sounded like you were about to...
Well, I was going to ask, how important is the way that they do this? I mean, she's been Foreign Secretary, but there's question marks about how emollient she is in terms of these meetings and diplomatic discussions. Has she got the...
charm?
The charm, the social skills to pull that off?
Well, we shall see. Of course, Boris Johnson, when he was Foreign Secretary, didn't go down terribly well. And then when he became Prime Minister, he did seem to manage to then get on very, very well with lots of other world leaders, including President Macron as well.
Yeah, because he called it a straitjacket, didn't he, when he was being Foreign Secretary?
Yeah, he ruffled lots of feathers. So it will be very interesting to see. But certainly in terms of the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is obviously also going to be on the agenda, clearly Ukraine is the issue. But with Ursula von der Leyen and President Biden, we would expect certainly that will be being discussed. She has made all sorts of not very diplomatic noises, hasn't she, about possibly suspending Article 16 and overruling parts of the protocol. And that is potentially very difficult. Now, she's softened the language a little bit since then. She's being more emollient, as you say. But clearly, Joe Biden has family links to Ireland and very clearly is saying, I don't want anything to happen that will jeopardise the Good Friday Agreement. But of course, Liz Truss's argument is that the Northern Irish Protocol, as it stands, is doing exactly that is
Boris
jeopardising
sign it, though.
Yeah. And it was Clinton, a Democrat, of course, who was instrumental in the Good Friday Agreement, which perhaps we shouldn't forget as well. So, anyway, Katherine, thank you very much for that.
Shortly, no doubt. We're joined by Con Coughlin now, who's the Defence and Foreign Affairs Editor for The Telegraph. Great to see you. I'm going to start with a broad question. It's her first outing on the world stage as Prime Minister. How do you measure success for a leader's outing on the global stage?
I think really not to make too many gaffes. I mean, I think everybody would be looking at Liz Truss, as they have been since she was appointed Prime Minister. I think she's acquitted herself very well throughout the whole saga of the Queen's burial, all the events she's had to attend, reading lessons at Westminster Abbey, etc. So she's come through that unscathed, and now it's the international stage that she has to address. And I think, as you're just saying in your previous discussion, there are lots of issues that she's at odds with other world leaders on, whether it is her plans to revive the economy or her very bullish support for Ukraine. Not everybody agrees with her on this. And I think, if she sticks to her guns and keeps the message simple, she'll do well.
Those guns, Con, of course, as you said, do concern Ukraine in terms of the amount that we've actually outlined that will continue to supply and questions about Germany and Paris. But I was just wondering, how much do you think what Putin said and the way he said it was actually because he knew all these people will be meeting in New York?
Oh, definitely. I think that the timing of his television address is specifically designed to put the frighteners on everybody in New York. As you said, we know that certain European countries, namely France and Germany, and also Italy, when they have a government, are very sort of equivocal about how to deal with Ukraine. Biden himself actually has done a good job on Ukraine in my book. The American weaponry, the British weaponry has helped the Ukrainians turn the tide of the war, which, of course, is what's really upset Putin. But, Putin's in a very weak position. The ultra-nationalist supporters of the war are pulling their hair out over the mismanagement of the campaign, the defeats they've suffered, and it's turning into a complete disaster for Putin. So his only recourse, really, is to try and terrify people by yet again talking about his nuclear weapons.
Respond to that sort of talk, which, I mean, it's alarming by anyone's standards.
Oh, it is very alarming, and I think that's the whole point of it. And he's now making direct threats about the capital of Britain, other European capitals. I mean, it is very alarmist. What I would say is that the people who control the nuclear systems in Russia are people who grew up during the Soviet Union, who know all about the doctrine of mutually assured destruction, and know full well that if anyone's finger hovers anywhere near the nuclear button in Russia, then Russia will cease to exist. So there's a lot of bluster and bluff in this, and what he's trying to do is persuade Britain, America and others to pull back from their support for Ukraine because we are doing so well. So these sham elections he's going to be having he says on Friday in the Donbass region is yet another attempt to say, well, this is Russian territory and back off. But I think we'd make a very big mistake if we took him at his word and did back off.
And Colin, what is the assessment of the Russians' capability in calling up these 300,000 military reservists who will have some kind of expertise, some kind of training? But do you think they can actually get those boots on the ground?
Well, first of all, a lot of them are specialists. Yeah, they're engineers and doctors and whatever. And they're reservists because they're not really, up to frontline fighting. It will take a long time to get them to the front line if they turn up. I mean, I noticed the Telegraph is now running a story online that people are already fleeing the country rather than allow themselves to be mobilised for a war they don't believe in. So I think if Putin really wanted to get serious, he'd go for a full-scale national mobilisation, which would give him the boots on the ground, as you say. But he hasn't, because I don't think he can. I think if he did that, nobody would respond, and his position would be even weaker. So I think that there's a lot of bluster coming out of Moscow, and it's meant to frighten us, and it sounds very frightening. But I think we just need to take a step back and analyse it properly and see what's actually going on, which is Putin is losing the war, and he's in a terrible hole, and he's still digging.
Con Coughlin, Defence Foreign Affairs Editor at The Telegraph, thank you very much indeed for your analysis. Great to speak to you. Thank you.
And Katherine Forster, our political reporter, is still there. I guess given that so many world leaders are in one place, it's an opportunity to present that united front in response to the threats that we've heard this morning from President Putin.
Absolutely. And as Con was just saying there, you would think that the timing of Putin's announcement has been done deliberately.
Yeah, look
While
at me,
everybody,
look
at me, I'm still here, because things have gone a little bit quiet, hadn't they? Obviously, Ukraine have been regaining territory. It's been going. The tide seems to have turned, and it's fallen a little bit down the agenda. But here he is today. Everybody gets up and he's, hang on a minute, I'm still here. Don't mess with us. I'm not bluffing. And the implication, as before, when we woke up that day back in February, that he could use nuclear weapons.